Hello all and welcome to History with R&R presents Band of Brothers Part 2. With me today is Bird of Prey 5, Mark D with a C, and Mexican Iron Man. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Thank
Great
you.
to be here.
Thank you.
And we'll take a quick spin through chat before we kick things off here and say hello to people. And I'm, for the first time, I'm almost as behind as Bird is normally. Anyway, hello, Mrs. Canuck. Wow. Welcome, my dear. Mark the Infinitely Tired, Golgo 13, Chris Persia, Archer Collin, Pat S. Thank you for putting this together, sir. Just another red shirt, Purple Valkyrie, Loki's Mornings of Mischief. Welcome. Who else do we got here? Luis Expero, welcome. I'm sorry if I butcher anybody's name. I'm terrible with them. Arwen Avalon, welcome. Let's see, who else do we have? I think that's all for now. Pod Racing Palpatine, welcome. And anybody else I've missed, I'm sorry. But thank you all for joining us. And of course, my co-host normally, Professor Brainy Specs, welcome, sir. Thank you for helping me 90% of the time. All right, so today's episode is Day of Days. And of course, it's the Normandy landing. It's D-Day. First of all, I think I'll go around the table and I'll let everybody kind of tell what D-Day means to them when they think about it. When they think D-Day, what comes to mind? Bird of Prey 5?
To me, D-Day was the day the tide of the war changed. At least that's the way, it was always taught to me as an American. It was America officially arriving in Europe and starting to kick ass. Now I know, because my grandfather, he was already in Italy and working his way up that way. But, the main forces came across, and that's what really put the Germans on the run, as far as I understand it. Without D-Day, we never would have made the, and we meaning allies, not us, the United States, but the allies wouldn't have made the big dent they did to get to Berlin or into Germany.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark D?
Well, yeah, to tag on to that, the beginning of the end, basically, for the Axis powers. Getting into Europe and just the undertaking, just how huge it was. We're just seeing a small, segment here, not to minimize it, but just part of that segment. And I listened to the podcast that HBO had on this, and it was interesting to talk to the writer, and he said they weren't sure how to cover this, and it's just after Saving Private Ryan was out. So how the heck are we going to film this and do this? So he said, well, I'm just going to focus on one person and see the war, the landing through them. But when you pull back and think of the immense scope and all the different landing fronts and the problems with weather and how to organize all this, and God forbid we failed that day, that would have probably lost the war. I think. I mean that who knows, but just the whole immenseness of the conflict. But then you drill down to see how these guys had trained so hard, and they were a band of brothers, and how they were able to fight and just help secure the landing there. And we're seeing that narrow viewpoint. We'll get into all the details, I'm sure, of the episode, but just when you pull back, it's an immense undertaking. And then you drill in and you see how amazing. And these guys never really wanted to talk about it, so I'm glad that Spielberg and Hanks and HBO got together to honor these real heroes. Although they most of the time they would never call themselves heroes, but that way we get to remember their sacrifices and what they did. Otherwise, who knows what kind of world we'd be facing right now.
Absolutely. And Mexican Iron Man.
Well, for me, I think my dad, who served in Vietnam, would always talk about how his uncles served. And for me, it was always told as a story of how men rose up. Plain and simple, the average guy rose up. And bunch has happened in this series that we're going to talk about. I mentioned this on last night's show and on Purple Show. I'm in chat. But this series has a huge amount of meaning for me because I was in New York City, Manhattan, downtown, not maybe 9 blocks from the towers when they fell that morning. And I was one of the last people off the island before the island got shut down completely. And this series, and this episode in particular, really had a profound part of giving me understanding and healing and pride in being an American. And so when my dad would talk about D-Day, when he would talk about it, to him it was the whole. It was his calling and his mission to go to Vietnam. And it's funny because he lied about his age to go and stuff like that.
Many did in this instance as well.
Yeah. So to me, this is a family legend story. That this is a tale of bravery and courage, and a call to arms of boys that decided to become men, and men who decided to become warriors.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, D-Day is a retribution story on two fronts. As a Canadian, D-Day represents the mistakes learned. Dieppe happened earlier, 2 years, as a matter of fact, before D-Day.
Right.
And it was a landing that didn't go well. It was a landing that was an absolute utter failure. Part of it was because of supply. Some of it was because, well, we could be here all day talking about why it went wrong. But anyway, a lot of Canadians died on those beaches. And in D-Day, the lessons they learned, as much as it's kind of a cliche now, and I kind of go, well, you should have had your plans right the first time. A lot of things were learned and made D-Day what it was on the beaches of Dieppe. And those men and women who died so that we would learn those lessons, get our nosebleed, and then come back and do it properly 2 years later. D-Day also represents when the war got real. After the evacuation of the British troops in Dunkirk, the war was really a sideshow in Africa for the most part. And until D-Day, it wasn't real again. It wasn't in your face, right across the channel. Okay, this is make or break. In World War I, it was said there was no man that could lose the war in an afternoon, except for Jutland. That Navy, if the British Navy would have lost Jutland, they could have lost the war in an afternoon. D-Day is one of those days where you could lose the war in an afternoon. And those come very, very, very rarely in war.
Those
And
they're rare. They're rare in war. That is very well aptly put, Ramblin, because if you look at, I've studied military history going back thousands of years, right? And if you literally look at war history on the entire planet, regardless of what's the weaponry that we've had, whatever the technologies, that's literally what you said. Many battles, few battles decided a war in one afternoon or one day.
yeah,
And you hit the nail on the head, brother.
yeah. D-Day was a battle that you could lose the war in the afternoon. And for my father, he always looked at World War II in a different light because he was home defense, which basically meant he got drunk on the Canadian dollar, uh, because he was home defense. But all his brothers were overseas, which is why he was home defense. And it was always a family mystery because my father was in the prime of his age and best health he's ever been in, but he was removed from the military for health reasons after his mother went in and flipped out after they told her that he would be going overseas along with his other brothers. So my father had to sit out the war while his brothers were overseas. They all came back. My dad's father was in World War One. It was sent home a casualty. And the family joke, up until those who are no longer around that can talk about it, namely my father would always say his dad called the Germans a pain in the butt because that's where they shot him. So it was always a joke.
Like Poppy in the episode tonight there, Papa.
Yeah. So for me, military goes far back in my family, and it is almost a shame where we are today. But we look back on these men and women who put it all on the line. They sat there with a pair of twos and went all in. And they didn't know if they had a full house or four of a kind, or if they had two pair. And they put it on the line anyway. And I think that should be remembered. I wanted, before I open it up to everybody else, there was, in my research for today, I was watching a lot of veterans talking, and that were there.
Thank you for sharing those, by the way. They were great.
No problem. And one of the lines in it made me laugh because you had two veterans talking to each other. And the one veteran gets teary-eyed. And he was talking about how without the rest of his brothers, he wouldn't be here today. He would be dead. There's no way without the rest of his division and the rest of the airborne. He owed his life to them. And one of the airborne that were standing beside him put his arm around him and said, if bullshit was blood, you'd be a casualty. I died laughing. That was hilarious. And just, to see him go from sad to just couldn't help himself, but he busted a gut. And that was what these men are now, today. No matter what conflict they were in, they're always so humble. It was like when they talk about what they do, it's like they were going to the store. Never mind taking a grenade and rushing a machine gun nest. They were just going to the store. It was just their job. They're 9 to 5. That's what I had to do. They don't see it like we do. We look at it and go, how in the hell would you do that? It's just, we can't fathom it because we didn't live it. And when they lived it, they didn't think about it. They just did it. And to me, that always amazes me. But I've been rambling for too much, so I'm going to let everybody else kind of throw in something here.
Well, just to tie into that, I would always think of someone who grew up next to my grandparents' house. I lived with my grandparents for a while. So I just call him Mr. R and Mrs. R. And he was kind of a meek guy. And as kids, I don't know if we kind of, let's say, picked on him, but like kind of said, oh, he's kind of a wimpy guy. And, we were like 8, 10, 12-year-old kids. He was playing the neighborhoods like, oh. And then we were very friendly with the family for years, after that. And we finally read his obituary. It turned out he was in the Normandy invasion and landed on D-Day. I was like, oh my God, and you don't, never would, we spent a lot of time in the neighborhood, never once mentioned or said, hey,
Nope.
You kids, And And then his wife was actually turned out that when she passed away, found out she was a nurse and served all over Europe as a nurse, uh, and uh, and so and these people never talked about what they did. And today you have people, I'm just joking, like I survived the meme wars or something. People, if something
Yeah.
stupid happens, they're like, or they're complaining about some little, some small things that happen in their life, like it's the biggest affront. And then you think of these people from this generation that went through what they went through, the Great Depression, and having to fight wars and having family and friends killed, injured, and they never really didn't really talk about it. So it was those kind of things that what Mike was mentioning and Bird of Prey. It's just great to hear these have these stories preserved, and it means a lot to show the next generation how to go forward. And we've got a lot of soldiers that were been fighting in the last year, not to get into current events, but through Afghanistan, and tying that into what Mike was saying with 9/11. I was watching some of the podcasts, so I got some more background on the on the show. I'd read the book years and years ago, so memories fade. So I watched some of the podcasts, which are really, I'd recommend we could put that in the links, or people to watch that, so they talk about the background of how they did the stories. And it's just really touching. Like at the start of the episode, the one of the they're interviewing the actual people, the soldiers, and the guy's breaking down at that last scene before the episode starts, before they switch to the C-47, or the transport plane. He's breaking down. What is this, like 40 years? I'm not sure when this is. What was 9? So almost 30 years later. What was the anniversary of the filming? But the guy's still, that's, picturing your buddies, getting killed or not making it. And that still hurts that many years later. Just shows how they're tough guys, but it's all held inside them.
Yeah. Like I remember watching one of the documentaries, and they were talking, the director was talking about how they would send film crews to the veterans' houses. And when the film crews arrived, there were crowds and crowds of people outside. And at first they thought it was, it's just somebody trying to get on camera, and they see all the Hollywood stuff. So, you know, they're just there to jump on the bandwagon. And then it occurred to them that the reason that these people are there is because this is the first time grandpa or grandma had talked about it. They'd never said anything. They just lived their life. It just gone on like it was another day at the office. Yeah. And this is the first time that grandpa was going, oh yeah, I jumped out of a plane at 120 miles an hour, landed in a swamp because they flooded the fields, and I almost drowned, but I made it out, and I met up with my buddies, and then we went and carried on our job. And to hear that for the first time, I can't even imagine that. You've known your grandpa for all your life, or your uncle, or your aunt, or your grandma. And then to hear, they did what? It must have been just shocking to them to hear the actual story for the first time.
Well, I mean, it's well said in a couple of the interviews. There's various interviews where they talk about, to put yourself in the shoes of these guys. They're basically have volunteered for something that not only have they never done, but no one else has done, which is jump out of an airplane and heavy artillery counter aircraft fire. I mean, just 1,000 things could go wrong. It's not like jumping out of an airplane nowadays. I mean, the technology is completely advanced and different. And the absolute sheer bravery and mission of purpose. Hey, I'm gonna stand up for this country, and I'm gonna stand up for all these countries because it's an allied effort, right? It's just the sheer amount of bravery to do something that no one's ever done under conditions that never existed before in human history. Going into battle from the air in free fall behind enemy lines, which is what this episode focuses on. This episode focuses on the narrow story of a few guys who jumped out of an airplane. And I think it was really intelligently done. I was listening to the writer, and I think it was brilliant, the fact that where we had Saving Private Ryan, which was on such a grand scale, and then we had this, which was a very specific tale of one guy and the few guys around him in this 50-minute or a 1 hour long episode. I think it was an incredibly brilliant way to showcase how brave it really took to literally be right there and make that decision. And many guys did die on the way down. Many guys died when they hit trees. Many guys, I mean, it wasn't even about getting shot. I mean, it was just getting down on the ground safely at night, no GPS, no infrared scopes, no night vision goggles. I mean, the way a SEAL jumps out of a plane now in a Halo was fundamentally different. Is epically more safe, actually, than what these guys did at a few thousand feet above the landing zones.
Yeah.
And in that first episode, when the real veterans are talking, and he's like, "Well, what's this airborne?" And nobody raised their hand to volunteer for it until they said, "Well, it's $50 more a month."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they got volunteers.
Yeah, well, sign me up, Buckaroo. I'll take the $50 a month. Yeah, sure. And you got to remember, they're just coming out of the Great Depression. Jobs were hard to come by. Military was a job, but even still, a lot of the United States is coming from a wind down, and they're just starting the build up to rebuild the United States military after many years of neutering it. They're finally trying to build it back up again, and so you had incentives like that, $50 extra. You had
good money.
It was good money. And I mean, they also had benefits for the families. That was another selling point, was yes, you may die, but if you die, we will, your family, I think it was like 10 grand or something.
What they said was 10,000.
Yeah. 10,000.
A lot of money
to your family.
Yeah.
And I mean, nowadays that goes, you go 10,000.
Well,
But
if you reverse calculate the math, I mean, I'm an accountant, so I'm a nerd, but
yeah.
But if you take a look at that, what you guys are talking about, the $100, I mean, that's basically like making $3,000 a month now versus $1,500 a month now.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between, hey, I'm getting paid $1,500 versus do I get $3,000? So that's that. And as far as 10,000 goes, I mean, Jiminy Crickets, that would be like, here, let me just punch in my calculator here. Oh yeah, that's like 150. Well, that's like 250 grand.
Yeah. So they had to offer, these things for these, for the men and women that were going to do this, because they knew that, your casualty list on this particular unit is going to be astronomical. Same with, like your pilots or your bomber crews. They were always paid a little bit more and, taken care of, because the casualty rate was going to be higher.
Yep. So yeah, and they was one of the comments in the episode. Yeah, they did make a specific point of that. Yeah, get your papers in. And I think one of the other troopers, I can't remember which one, said, I also want to be around guys who are really well trained and who know their stuff. Basically, they're going to be much better trained than the average grunt, was one of the quotes from one of the characters or one of the troopers. Yeah. So yeah, these guys were, we look at it now maybe with, the equipment they're wearing and how they're dressed and that's ancient history, but that was cutting edge stuff that they had. I mean, to have a small, when Winters lands, he pulls the little mini flashlight out of his zipper there. And, but that was probably, high tech stuff, or, thinking,
James
there's no
Bondish,
cell phones, batteries were huge. And you look at old military, radios, the radio was, huge, you remember the old cell phones you thought were big. These are massive, radios with huge, battery technology wasn't advanced. So the batteries are massive. And when they landed, they, part of the episode too, they lost, they explained it. I guess the pilot tried to gain altitude. So he was going too fast when they jumped. So they lost, Winters lost his bag with his gun and his weapons. And I guess one of the other guys lost his leg bag, which had the radio. So they're landing, like you said, in the middle of the night, no advanced tech, that we would consider, in the dark. Winters he's in charge because the other he doesn't know it at the time, but the other plane has crashed, where the company commander has been killed, and they've got to round up all the troops and get going and meet their objective. And the Germans are all dug in and have fortified positions. So it's a pretty scary situation.
I
Yeah.
thought it was fascinating, the scene where, well, let's see, maybe I'm jumping ahead too far, but let me see. The scene where they had the horses in the carriage.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I remember when I was first watching this, I was actually I remember at the time I was kind of bored in episode 1 and going into episode 2 for a while. It was this episode that brought me in. It wasn't even the drop scenes that really brought me in, because again, we had already seen Saving Private Ryan, which was on an epic scale. I mean, just an absolutely epic scale, right? What got it for me was the close range and proximity of the scene, both with the Germans that were captured. I think it was this episode, right, where they gave them some cigarettes and stuff. The guys are walking. So there were two scenes for me. It was when they had the prisoners, and then they go off camera. And then they just nail them all. And
Yeah. You couldn't shoot that today.
Absolutely not. And
You could not show American
I don't think you
soldiers.
could show probably either one of those scenes.
No,
actually.
no, because the scene you're alluding to is, one of the Germans was actually an American, but his history was German. So his family went back to the fatherland, and he's in German outfit, but he grew up in the States. And so this other trooper is talking to this guy who's been captured, and then he goes away because he's got a report in. And as he's walking away, they all give him a cigarette. And then it's implied, because you don't actually see it on the screen, but it's implied because what you hear is you see them being given a cigarette, all of the German prisoners of war. And then the next thing you hear is a machine gun. So
Right.
It doesn't take 1 + 1 = 2 to figure out what happened.
Yeah, what was interesting about that was the when I was reading today, and the author of the episode said that meeting up of that other, the German trooper went back, didn't occur at that point. It happened a few days later, but he thought for the drama of the show, it made a lot more sense to have him meet up at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so he said he took it a little bit dramatic license to try to give you that 1-2 punch, to say then. And that was Spears, who had executed the soldiers, and they had some interviews, and they said it was saying maybe he didn't do it, maybe he didn't, but then interviews with winners, he said he definitely did it, he executed him. And they said, well, look what's happening, you're behind enemy lines, you've got no provisions to have POWs, you're surrounded, what are you going to do? So in that case, obviously a violation of rules of warfare and things like that. And then later in the war, the German soldiers started executing our troops, and we started executing them back. And that, that kind of ended that. There was kind of an understanding there. But think of it, you're surrounded. I'm not trying to excuse it or sugarcoat it, but and that's why the director, when he said he wanted to leave it a little bit ambiguous as whether or not it happened, but from everything I've read, it did happen. So.
Yeah, exactly. And things like that happened all the time.
Absolutely.
And I mean, today's world, you couldn't report something like that, because if you did, the spin back home would be completely different. And unfortunately, these things do happen. If you just go to the Pacific War and some of the stuff that went down there, today people would lose their jobs. Like, politicians would be screwed. There'd be protests in the streets over it because of what they had to do to get the job done. And unfortunately, during war, sometimes rules need to be broken from time to time. But again, it's the difference between then and now, and the situation. I mean, it was kill or be killed. one of the two.
Well, that's what war is.
Yeah.
I mean, now we send drones out to do stuff, but a couple thousand years ago, me, Mark D with the C, we're gonna sharpen up our swords, and we're on the front lines with a leather shield, and I'm gonna be
Go
behind
at it.
Mark. Mark and I are gonna fight with each other because we're probably both the same weight class. So
Yeah.
Mark, no, you go, Mexican Iron Man, send the Mexican in. No, you go, Mark.
Put your armor on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You go first. I got the drinks.
Well, that's true. George Bush Senior. Everyone called him a wimp, and it would always drive me crazy because he was one of the youngest, navigators in World War II on a ship, on an aircraft, and he got shot down. It's like you're calling the guy a wimp back in that campaign, and he almost got it was a miraculous thing. He got saved, and they had that footage they found from the submarine that rescued him. And they said that island that they were, if he had landed on that island, that the Japanese general there didn't take any prisoners. He beheaded the U.S. soldiers and put their heads on stakes.
Yeah.
So it's so that always drove me crazy when anyone called anyone a wimp.
My pop told me that story, even back then and stuff, and Mark, you would say, I'm with you, man. That always used to annoy the snot out of me. And back then, and by the way, that was when I was a demo, when I was in a different political party and stuff. I mean, but stories are stories, and bravery has to cut across all sectors of society. And to me, what this episode was about for me, what stood out for me is that quote from that book, and I can't remember the author right now, but it's that bad times create strong men. Strong men create what's it called? Good times, and good times create weak men, and weak men create bad times. These were some bad times on the planet, some very difficult times.
My dad always instilled in me, if you're in a bar or something, never look to the guy who's bragging about what he's done. Look to the guy who's sitting having a beer, being quiet.
Yeah.
And if you watch these veterans, they're the guy with the beer in the corner, not saying a word. Meanwhile, there's some other idiot bragging about, what he's done in the last 24 hours. And they're just sitting there and they're just chuckling to themselves and having that beer. And they're not drawing attention to themselves. They're not, putting their name up in big marquee lights. That's the difference. And I think as a population, we need to get back to that.
How about, let me ask you this question. I want to ask this, go around the horn if we could. Who's our favorite character? What's our favorite character moment in this episode? Because I want to share mine, but I want to know what your guys' is.
Well, I know, unfortunately, Bird has only seen the first episode, so I'll.
Okay, well, it could be from the first episode, Bird.
Yeah, I'll let Bird go first.
Okay.
Like, what's your favorite moment of the first episode, if you had one? Was it the scene in the sky? Is it when they're jumping over?
Oh, I feel like, did I bring it up to?
Yeah, I think you brought it up to me. Yeah,
I think I brought it up to you before we started. Son of a bitch.
Okay, the stream is official. Bird has said son of a bitch.
I don't think I've ever heard Bird curse on screen.
Oh, no, that's a staple. Your stream has made it once Bird has said son of a bitch.
Okay, because I don't think I've ever actually heard him say a bad word ever in 3 years. Or 2 years.
Then you haven't been listening. I mean, just today I did a Call of Duty stream, and every 2 seconds was some terrible.
Actually, wait a minute. Now I'm remembering your Star Trek one from last season. Never mind.
Okay. Oh God, I was just watching it.
Well, it's okay. We can go to the
next
I
could go. And then, it's always tough to I'm cheating because I'm scrolling through the episode because it's such a fantastic. It's on HBO Max. If anyone's a subscriber to that, you can watch it. Although I do have the Blu-rays, but it's convenient. But the whole episode is just fantastic. But I think tying on to Sobel's kind of the bad guy in that first episode as a trainer, but I think he some of the the guys and winners, they admitted, he helped make them what they were, although he wasn't, a good leader in the end in terms of, the field tactics, and couldn't find his way out of a paper bag. But I think then seeing winners realize, he's got the responsibility to be in charge. In the moment where I think the soldier's name was Day, I think he was from another, he was in the 82nd, but he wasn't part of the group, but he would help the volunteer to take out those machine guns. And when he sends him forward and he finds his body, he finds him dead, and he kind of waves his hand over his face to try to see if he's alive. And he just kind of realizes, you could see that the actor is does such a good job of conveying how, that he had to order someone to go do something and take out the gun, and he takes out the gun, but then he gets killed after that. So I think the weight of command is finally, these are young guys too. I mean, they're probably 18 to 25 at most, maybe. So you don't have to order someone you've been through basic with. And in the podcast, they explained he was on the basketball team, so he'd played basketball with them. They knew each other. And it's a really horrible thing to have to do, to order someone to do something like that, and then not make it. So, and of course the end quote, I'm sure we'll talk about that. That's a great moment that Winners makes the end quote. But Damian Lewis, I think, really does a great great job in this episode, conveying the horrors of war, but then the responsibilities too. And I think the guys all look up to him. Which is, it's a great way. You're watching actors, but by the end of this episode, it feels real. Like you said, the first episode, maybe it's more of, a comedic episode with a spaghetti scene, and it's just, the intro to these guys and what they're going through. But then the shit really hits the fan when they get into the drop, and the horrors of war, are revealed to them.
Yeah, for
absolutely.
me, in the first episode, now I remember, was when that guy was pretending to be the sergeant or the general, whoever he was, the outranked. And
yeah.
Major,
Cut the fence.
Hey, they cut the fence. He's like, "Who gave you that order?" That guy's on leave.
That was a great scene. Yeah,
and he's not here.
yeah, he's on leave.
It wasn't in somewhere another. Yeah.
We're so used to seeing characters like that scene that Bird's talked about. We're so used to seeing characters become greater than they are when we first meet them, and to see Sobel absolutely crumble. I mean, over the course of 2 episodes, was just absolutely hilarious. And according to my dad, who served in Vietnam, not uncommon.
No.
According to my pop, he said there were plenty of morons in Vietnam, so leading in positions they shouldn't have been in.
And of course, Sobel, should mention, had a tragic end. Though he attempted suicide in 1970, and he survived, but he ended up blinding himself, and he lived in a veterans home until 1986, where he died of malnutrition because of the way our veterans are treated in some of these VAs. So I mean, and his son has been trying to he comes out as kind of the villain in this in the beginning of the series. But
the other part of the story is that he ends up going and training guys. What he takes as a defeat, as a reassignment, basically still becomes, because he was really good at training the company, right?
Yeah, no, he's fantastic at that.
He was fantastic. And I got to tell you, when I saw the spaghetti, I instantly knew what was going to happen, because when I used to run a much younger, thinner, better looking version of myself, I used to run cross country. I had a coach do that damn same thing to us in high school. Mm-hmm. The damn thing. He's like, all right, we're gonna go training. Like we're all excited because he arranged for us. There's this Italian pizza joint right near the high school, man. and they had an afternoon early bird special. Like there was like something ridiculous, like $5, and you could get a salad and pasta. But he said, "Let's go, guys!" And we're like, "Yay!" You're like, "All right, time to train." We're like, "What the?"
yeah. Wait a second. Yeah,
that's not going to end well. And Sobel did end up in Normandy too, though. I just read his bio, and he did end up there. And
yes, that's what I was getting at. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. But
that's okay. Yeah, no, he did. Yeah, so he did, contribute to the war. I guess we all deal with kind of people that are, SOBs. But imagine if he had been a great tactician too. It kind of reminded me like a General Patton in a way, but not having the tactical skills in the end, in terms of being, you got to be an SOB, right? If you want to people to follow you and train you. You know, for war, you know, this is not, it's not like it's some easy job that you're doing. You gotta have people respect you and discipline. Of course, he went overboard, which made people hate him. But to a certain extent, it's they got those guys in great shape, and we got running up and down that mountain 6
Yeah.
miles round trip.
Yeah.
I'm sure that helped in the later on in the
Oh,
war.
absolutely. Yeah. So Mexican Iron, what was your
Well,
favorite?
I mean, Mark kind of already alluded to it. To me, it was the way this episode ended, with that quote, which to me was the reading, and the reason why is that when I see Saving Private Ryan, I still cry at the end. I mean, not one time has that movie ended when he's when he's looking when he's looking at the tombstones, and the music starts, and I tear up every single time. And while he talks, what I found fascinating about this episode, and I learned this, I'm getting ready for the show yesterday. I was listening to the writer's interview, and I think the writer was interviewed by HBO Max maybe a couple months ago. I don't know, something like that. But what he talked about is that they rewrote that line over and over and over again to try to get the most impact of the emotion into the fewest number of words. And it's a great way to end the episode. I mean, to me, it's a fantastic way, because he conveys so much. It's real simple. He says, I'm going to find a plot of land, and I'm going to, stay there, and I'm going to have a good life, and da-da-da. And I hadn't seen the show again until yesterday. It'd been about a year, I think, year and a half. So was it a year and a half ago? Yeah, I guess it was a year and a half ago. The last time I saw all the episodes. And man, I tell you, it's just so powerful, simple, well done. It's a voiceover, and it's just well done. It's just very well done.
Absolutely. And for me, it'd be Winters, which is kind of like the main theme here. But just how great leaders are not the ones who are clamoring for it. They're not the ones who that's their sole purpose. I want to be upgraded, ranked up, kiss ass, da 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 da. Those don't tend to be your best leaders. The ones that are your best leaders are the ones that are forced into position. And Winters, you find out, he lands. He's not expecting to take the full reins, and throughout the whole episode, he's fighting it. He doesn't want that obligation. He doesn't want to be in charge. He doesn't mind being second in command, but he doesn't want the full weight of leadership. And then by the end of the episode, he accepts it. And that arc in one episode is amazing that they pulled it off so well in one episode, where he goes from, second in command to the leader of Easy Company. And just that battle within. I don't want this. I don't want this. I really don't want this. Come on, did they find him yet? Please say he landed okay. I don't want this. Why is this on my head? And, he takes it, and he finally comes to somewhat peace with it. He's like, okay, you alluded to Mexican Iron Man at the end. He's like, okay, I'll do what I have to do now. But if I survive this, never again. I'm finding myself a piece of land and front porch to sit on, and hell with this. And, he wasn't like the commander at the beginning who wanted the promotions, wanted the accolades, wanted all of that. To hell with everybody else. I want. And those guys tend to fall to the wayside when push comes to shove. It's the men that are forced in there by fire that really end up taking the lead. And then this episode shows that so well.
Yep.
And it's just done. It's done very subtly. It's not beat over your head. He doesn't throw a temper tantrum or something stupid like you'd see in a modern day flick. He reluctantly takes the command of Easy Company and goes, okay.
And he should have gotten a Medal of Honor. Really, they when they review what I guess we could talk about how they take out the big guns that are bombarding Utah Beach. So was it Mears was the leader that was killed? I want to get the name
I think
wrong.
so, yeah.
It was Mears, right? And so he's killed in the drop. And he's got to take command. So they go, "Who's in charge?" And his buddy's like, "Hey, you got to go there. When you're in charge now." So he shows him where the guns are. And one of the quotes at the end of the episode too was, it's a textbook. He invented that or devised that strategy, and that's still taught at West Point to this day, on how to take out a fixed, encampment. And he just came up with that, and you could see how well the guys had trained together. But this is their first real trial by fire, and he leads the guys in too. So he's in charge of about 200 guys in a company, but he's he's at the forefront. And everyone said that when he was interviewed after the historian that interviews the soldiers after combat, and he kind of downplayed his role, but everyone said that he really took charge and took the lead in that, and it was brilliant the way. And think of how many lives they saved of our GIs and all the allies, and that were
and the most amazing part about that is the guns that he takes out were not supposed to be there. There's an interview later with one of the veterans where they say that those guns were not on the air reconnaissance, so they didn't even know those guns would be there. And so it was crucial that those guns go bye-bye, because they were just wreaking havoc on the beach, and it wasn't part of the plan. That wasn't, when they were back in England, going over what their company was going to do, that wasn't on the agenda, because they didn't know those guns were there to start with.
Yes, there was no air cover to take him out, right? It was up to those guys from Easy Company and the other, the paratroopers to take out those guns. And think of it, we've the most famous now is obviously Saving Private Ryan, where you see that beach scene. But then these are the guys and behind the scenes that were dropped, to try to help make that invasion become a success. Otherwise, war could have ended, like we've been saying that day. So
right, because those guns, those guns are launching shells that are large enough to take out aircraft, and shells that are large enough to fall on the beach, take out platoons, large enough to land and hit the landing craft. I mean, they're finding some major artillery for the time, and they're way behind the front. So there's no way that they can be taken out by anything that's coming off the water, and the planes just couldn't get near them. I mean, the role played that mission success. If there was a battle afternoon, as Ramblin says, that determined a war, it was that skirmish or that small battle or that mission that determined that battle was able to be successful to win that war. To me, it's a linchpin type of engagement.
Yeah, you can read about it. It's called the Brycourt Manor Assault. So there's a Wikipedia article, or if you want to, I can put the link in if you want to.
Yeah, sure. I'll get that done right now while you're talking.
But it's amazing.
Mark, I'm sorry, what's it called, Mark?
The Brycourt Manor Assault. And there's a lot written about it. There's a lot of videos. So if you want to go into more detail, we're just touching on some of the highlights of the episode, but just to see how amazing these guys were and how brave they were to do this. And of course, then there's some funny moments thrown in, like Malarkey actually did that. He actually wanted to get a Luger for grab a Luger, so he risked his life. And they were interviewing some of the guys. I'm sure you saw that too, where they're saying he actually risked his life to get a Luger. Where it's like, just wait, I'm sure you'll come across.
You don't need to go and jump in front of a gun. You wait your turn, dude. We've got a long war to go. You don't have to get it all done in an afternoon.
So they throw in moments like that, the little moments of love it. You're like, what kind of crazy SOB. And the other interesting thing too was the writer of this episode, Orloff. That was his first published, or I guess, show that got picked up, and he was new to writing. He'd been an ad executive, and he was talking about his experience. He said there was no writer's room for this, so they kind of just wrote their episodes. And he met with Spielberg one time, and they were kind of like freelance writers. But the way this whole series flows together, it's just the way they got the characters. But it was really, really interesting. Hear his story if you listen to that podcast. on how, this is his first writing gig. He kept saying, don't F this up. Don't F this up. He was so nervous about it. He just let the story tell himself. And then when he latched on the idea of telling it through Winter's eyes, then he kind of said, then he found his, found what he wanted to do for the episode. But he said the actions speak for itself. And then I guess one thing that was kind of easy to miss, maybe he said when he's on the Sherman tank at the end, the blood in the road, he said that was supposed to be more prominent, or that was supposed to represent the horses that were killed in that initial encounter, and just more, the horror of war, just, the blood splattering over the road was supposed to be, you're supposed to assume that it was the, see that it was the horses, but he said the scene wasn't shot, it was tough to tell that, but it was just, real interesting to listen to all the background behind the scenes. And they said one thing Spielberg said, he didn't want any cranes used in the filming. He said they kind of violated that, but he wanted everything shot down low, like you're at, and when you think about that, you're at the soldier's level, during the combat. It kind of makes it more down to earth. You're not high up, shooting down, except that one shot in the tree. I guess maybe they're shooting down, but they're showing the trooper's point of view.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a question that I think even Bird can comment on, because he hasn't seen the second episode. But I think there's a moment in this episode where they're about to jump. They're getting in the planes and they're getting ready. I think it was either this episode or just before, at the end of last episode. Yeah, last episode. Sorry. So it leads over to this one though. Where the guy's wife sends him a letter saying that one of his buddy's brothers is dead in Italy. So I think the question I'm going to ask the entire panel, I'll go around with Bird, starting with Bird. Would you have told him, or would you have kept it?
I'm
Bird.
glad you asked this, because actually this was the other thing I was going to maybe bring up or not, for a favorite part of the episode. I think it's a tough one. I would have told him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me jump in front of Mark, because I gotta pull off in 5 minutes for another.
Yeah, no problem.
But I don't think you can hold. I don't know if this is why Bert answered the way he did. I don't think I could hold on to that kind of information and knowledge when I'm a vessel for that knowledge that needs to get to its destination. And to me, it would have been something I immediately did. I wouldn't have even refolded up that sheet of paper and put it in my pocket and said, I'll do it later when I see him. I would have felt compelled to, I'm going to go find this guy right now and let him know.
Yeah. And Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, not an easy one, but I think I would have told him too, because I would want him to use that anger to kill more Germans for me. So, and it's like Mike is saying, you're going to want to hold on to that info and the way that, he found out anyway. So you're going to tell someone. Jacket. So, I mean, do you tell him, is it going to make it, one day, or is it going to, so it's not an easy one, but I think the character, the officer lucked out by, leaving it the wrong jacket.
Yeah.
But you can see how he used
it.
It
was lucked out. I thought it was done on purpose.
Oh, you think it was done on purpose? That's
how I read it. I watched it. I'm with Bert. I think I saw it as it being on purpose.
Okay. Yeah, that is a very interesting way to look at it. He purposely left his jacket for this guy to pick up. Yeah.
Because what are the chances?
Yeah, exactly. That he'd pick up that right jacket that has the thing in it. And in a way, this scene for me was so good because I think in a modern film, the guy would have flipped out. The guy would have yelled at him and got mad at him, and then they would have done a whole storyline of those two being at odds for the rest of the show, right? Because, you didn't tell me about my brother and blah, 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 blah.
I'm calling human resources.
Yeah, right? So there would have been that dynamic, and they didn't go there this time. And I think that was really good and really done well. And I agree with all you. I would have told him. I mean, you just have to. It's part of... You'd rather hear. I think I'd look at it like he'd rather hear it from someone he knows and read about it in a paper. I mean, could you imagine that? Down the road in France or sitting around in Paris, and they read the paper, and he says, "Well, that was my brother." You go, "Yeah, I know about that. I knew about that before we jumped." You what? I just that's something.
The more I thought about it, the more he was not only justified, I think compelled to tell him.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not only, later he's going to have to tell him anyway. It's like, well, what if, God forbid, he gets killed?
Yeah. And
Then,
never knowing.
Exactly.
yeah, then he goes months, years without knowing. That's
Guys, I apologize. I got to pop off for another commitment.
Yeah, well, before you do,
Yep.
I'll go around the panel. I'll start with you. Everybody can promote their stuff, and we'll start wrapping it up. Mike, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to promote this amazing show that we have on everybody's channels. I think I'm hoping that this will be. I'm hoping that this model that Pat S came up with and you guys are all doing. I'm hoping we can do this with other things down the road. I think it's a great time to come together. There's been so many breaks in the fandom in different ways on channels large and small. I think the time has come where we've all developed our. I mean, I don't really use my channel at all, so I really don't have anything to promote. But I do want to promote, how Loki and Pat S put this thing together, and then all of you guys who participated, everyone, Purple and everybody Sunday, Monday. We're gonna go, every night, for 10 episodes. I'm hoping this model is something that we can do with other stuff to create opportunities where we can all come together, and not just say, sub to this person, sub to that person. Certainly, we want to do that. But I think it's important that we show that we show some solidarity and come together in a world that's splitting itself apart. There's no better thing than for us to do is come together and create together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mexican Ironman, for joining us. Mark D, you can stand up and.
Sure, but yeah, that's great sentiment, Mike. Yeah, and it's fun. Really honored to be on a panel like this and talk about something so solemn, and to honor these guys and. Just like to, just to touch on the episode just a tiny bit more before I give that shameless plug. But I just want to read, what the end quote found this on a website. So it says, for destroying the German guns at Brycourt Manor, the following awards were awarded. Bronze Stars, Walter Hendricks, Donald Malarkey, John Plesha, Joe Toy, Carl Lipton, Cleveland Petty, Myron Rainey, Popeye Wynn. Silver Stars, Buck Compton, Bill Garnier, Gerald Lorraine, and Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second highest, just below the Medal of Honors, awarded to Lieutenant Richard Winters. And then the last quote was, Easy Company's capture, the German battery became a textbook case of an assault on a fixed position and is still demonstrated at the United States Military Academy at West Point today. And then they list the casualties and deaths. So they list, Robert Wynn that was injured and Private Hall that was killed by the mine. And it's just, it's a solemn way that they, end these episodes. They really treat, the characters with respect, with this production and Spielberg and Hanks. And it's just, it's just really appreciated. And I guess as, to tie that back into what Mike said about 9/11, when I watched this too, it had a big, I'm very close to New York City. I could actually see the smoke from the towers, and part of the effect I think these episodes had, it had even more effect, I think, because of the proximity to 9/11 in terms of our country being attacked again. So, obviously that wasn't planned, but I think that's when I look back on this, I always tie it to 9/11 too, just because of, my memories of that time too. So I recommend everyone, if you try to find it on HBO Max or, try to find a way to watch it. I'm sure you can rent it, but it's, one of the best, miniseries, I've seen. It's just, just can't recommend it any more than that. And just check out, it's kind of tough to follow up that. I've been saying to check out my channel, but almost don't want to do it. But I do a lot of 3D printing and toy collecting and things like that. So check my channel. I think Mrs. Canuck was putting the link in, so I appreciate that. And I'm on Thursday night with Cloudburn Times and Raquel R.M. Briggs. We're doing a Clobby's Corner show every Thursday night. And I always do a Sunday night stream. I know, Mike, you're invited. I know you're always on with Doomcock, so I just have, that's no problem there. But I do a late night Sunday night stream too, because that's also
join you. I know. I'm every Sunday.
Oh, I know. I know. It's just Sunday night ends up being a good night for me because it's the end of the week too. But I realize that. But I appreciate anyone who hangs out there, watches watch Doomcock first and maybe catch part of my show on the replay. And I was at Comic-Con on Sunday, so we did Sunday night did a whole stream on Comic-Con. And then we're finishing this part 2 because we went for 4.5 hours, almost half as long as Doomcock on Thursday night with on Clobbering Time. So just appreciate everyone that's been here to watch this, and the chat has been fantastic talking to us, and it's just it's a real honor to be here. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely not a problem. You're always welcome. Bird of Prey 5.
Thank you, Ramblin', for telling me about this, because honestly, I've always wanted to watch Band of Brothers. I knew about it, but I never found the time. And today I forced myself to watch the first episode, and now I'll go ahead and watch the rest of them on HBO Max. So I thank you. It was about time I did, and I'm glad I started. And wanted to thank you for that. And of course, for those of you, if by some chance you don't know who I am, I basically review Star Trek and do live streams. And no matter how bad new Trek is, I will review it. So we're in the
God bless you.
process. I'm in the process of Lower Decks. We've got one episode of Lower Decks. There'll be a week off. Then there's Prodigy. And then next month, the 18th, God help us, Discovery Season 4.
I've watched every minute of that.
Season 4 starts a few days after my birthday next month. And
Happy birthday,
God bless
Bird.
it's gonna be a tough month.
Well, Bird, I did
Next
see
month.
the Prodigy premiere at Comic-Con, so if you want to hit me up and talk about that, I'm going to tell you all about it. I don't want to hurt
Thank
the audience
you.
tonight, though. So
Yeah, no problem. So
I just want to note for the record that we just spent an hour and change talking about D-Day, yet somehow Mark D with the C comments that it would be much more tragic to talk about Star Trek Discovery.
It would be. And make sure, I'll do it for them. Make sure you hit birdofprey5.com for all your Bird of Prey 5 needs.
Thank you.
And always vote Kuroga and down with Turtistan. Okay, so all right. So for me, I have this channel, History with R&R. We do live streams every Mondays. We do videos every Friday. As a matter of fact, this Friday we're going to do a tie-in as this rolls on and goes to other channels. Friday, we will have a roundtable on History with R&R about the paratroops that didn't go well, and that would be Market Garden. Market Garden will be covered on Friday on History with R&R. I hope that you all enjoy that. It was a good roundtable discussion between myself, Mark Damefully Tired, and Professor Brainy Specs. We had a good conversation about what went wrong, what went right, and just, the overall feeling of that, and when, unfortunately, war plans don't go to plan. So I hope you all enjoy that. Also, I have karaoke on Rambling Canuck, which is my secondary channel, every Saturday night at 9:05 Central. Myself and my wonderful better half, Mrs. Canuck, or Mary's Game Room, depending on which channel you're on. We host that. We have fun, have laughs. Mary's Game Room, of course. She does gaming, tabletop on Saturday, and then they usually do a virtual stream on Monday with virtual games, and they always have a good time. And it usually goes off the rails in about 5 minutes. So do check out Mary's Game Room if you can. Also, I want to give a special thank you to Pat S. for putting this all together and rallying us all as crazy lunatics together and getting us working on one thing. Thank you so very, very much. And also to Loki's Mornings of Mischief, who did the bulk of the intro that you saw at the beginning of this show. Thank you, sir. I added my own little tidbit to it, but it was mostly done by Loki, so credit where credit is due. Thank you very much, sir. And with that, I think I'll end this by saying, to those who jump and die, we salute you.